My name is Hiroki Matsuuchi, and you are listening to or watching Bridges, a weekly showcase of a single content creator in Japan and their content. This is episode number 34. And today we are featuring Anthony Yo and the content he produces over at the Tokyo Podcast. Tokyo Podcast is a relatively new audio podcast on the scene that focuses on a new Japan-based theme with each episode. In only the past 12 episodes, the host has touched upon topics such as buying a cell phone in the country, learning the language, the history of this great nation, as well as a very interesting episode all about the experiences of the half-Japanese population, both in Japan and abroad. What impressed me initially about Tokyo Podcast was the production quality, but kind of what ended up keeping my attention was the breadth of experience and expertise some of the guests he has on the show have. One of my personal favorites is episode number 10, where he talks to Laura Perez Takagi and Megumi Nishikura about their documentary film titled Hafu. While I am clearly a bit biased towards this topic, being a hafu myself, this is nevertheless a really great episode with some really great guests. So here is just a preview of episode number 10 of Tokyo Podcast.
Tokyo Podcast episode number 10.
Hey everybody, on today's show I'm going to be talking to two very talented filmmakers who are making a documentary film about the growing number of mixed race people living in Japan. Hey everybody, welcome to Tokyo Podcast number 10. I am your host, Anthony Joe, and I gotta say I'm very excited about today's show because I am going to be talking about a subject that I'm very familiar with, and that is being a mixed race person living in Japan. I'll be talking to two talented filmmakers who have a documentary film coming out called Hafu about the experiences of being a mixed Japanese living in Japan. It is estimated that 1 in 30 people born in Japan now are born to one Japanese parent and one foreign parent. So there's a growing number of mixed race people living in Japan. However, they're not really represented too much in Japanese society and culture. And in some cases, some of these people go to great lengths to hide their mixed race background. So it's going to be a very interesting subject. I'm really looking forward to talking to them. That's coming up a little bit later on in the show. Today I'm talking to two documentary filmmakers from Tokyo. With me is Laura Perez Takagi, who was born in Tokyo but raised in various cities around the world. Her father is Spanish and her mother is Japanese. She graduated from the Audiovisual Communications and Multimedia Science Center in Madrid, where she wrote and directed 2 short films. Also with us is Megumi Nishikura, who was born in Tokyo, also grew up in various cities around the world, and graduated from the Tisch School of Arts in Film and Television Production in New York. She has produced documentaries for the United Nations, Associated Press, and various NGOs. Their latest film is called Hafu, and it documents the growing number of mixed-race people living in Japan. Welcome, guys.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Do you think it's harder for Hafus living in Japan than it would be, say, in America or in London?
Well, the thing is, in Japan is a society that, well, as we have written everywhere in the media, it's like once proclaimed itself as monoethnic, and there's like this really big barrier toward, and this, you know, how the culture is really strong, that it doesn't look further ahead of what it is, I think. So when you spot something that's a little bit different, everybody focuses on it because it's not the same as everything else. So that's why I think we tend to stand out in society here in Japan more than it would happen anywhere else in the world where there's more diversity or people are more used to looking at people with, you know, different features.
Do the Japanese consider Hafus half Japanese, half Gaijin, or do they just consider them not Japanese?
I think it just depends on the person, really.
I mean...
In your guys' experience, how long have you both lived here?
I lived here for 5, almost 6 years.
I've lived here for 12 years.
So when you guys are out and about, What do Japanese look at you guys? What do they think?
I think most of them think I'm a foreigner.
Yes, I think so too.
Yeah, but in very rare occasions they've asked me if I was half Japanese. Yeah.
And then when you tell them you're half Japanese, what's their reaction?
Mostly surprise. They're surprised, and they ask me to show my mother's photo. And then they feel that it's really funny that my last name is so Japanese, like Takagi. You know, they can't believe I'm Takagi-san. They're like, really, you're Takagi-san with that face? And so yeah, I mean, it's the story of my life. I guess every day is like that. So.
Japanese language study has been growing quite a bit in popularity over the past few years, no doubt, with help from the ever-increasing popularity of manga and anime abroad. This has brought about the notion of learning the language through these shows, learning Japanese through anime mainly, and I guess manga as well, if you want to practice your reading. And regardless of whether or not you think this is actually possible, the guest on this next episode has some really interesting things to say about the topic. So enjoy this next selection from episode 12 of Tokyo Podcast.
In continuing our Japanese language series, I'm excited to talk to Mr. Ken Cannon today, who runs a website called japanthroughanime.com. As many of you know, Japanese anime is extremely popular around the world, and the question that gets asked a lot is, can I learn Japanese by watching anime? And my guest today says that you can. So Ken, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Glad to be here.
So tell us, you run a website called japanese-to-anime.com, and your claim to fame is that people can learn Japanese by watching anime. Is that correct?
Yes, that's I'd say about 90% correct. There's actually a little bit of a kind of a tidbit that you do need to know is that a lot of people think that you can simply just learn anime simply just from just watching anime subtitled and doing nothing else, which is actually not true. As you probably can guess, you actually do have to work at it, and there's kind of a strategy and a method to doing that, and that's what I teach.
Okay, so did you yourself learn Japanese by watching anime?
I did. Back when I was 16, I was really into the whole anime thing. In fact, I actually had a kind of a rough time at the time, so anime was kind of like my savior. I don't know if you know what social anxiety is. Have you heard of that?
What's that?
It's basically anxiety disorder. It's called social phobia, really. That you're scared to go outside, and you're kind of like hikikomori is the Japanese word for it. You're really kind of scared of social situations, and it actually prevented me from going to school for about a year or so. And during that time is when I kind of got into anime and stuff. I was watching it a lot, and I had a lot of time on my hands since I was doing homeschooling and stuff. It was a rough time for me, but I started to learn anime during that time, and that's how I developed this whole thing.
That's a great excuse. I wish I thought of that when I was in school.
Oh yeah.
I have a study phobia.
Yeah.
It only manifests itself Monday to Friday. Miraculously goes away on the weekends.
Yeah.
So you started watching anime, and what happened? Your interest in Japanese studies grew from that?
Yeah. At first, I didn't even know what it was. I was watching it in subs. I just knew it was an English language. But after I started watching it a while, I started to get into it a little bit more. I felt the Japanese dub of it was a lot more kind of encapsulating, and kind of the actors were a lot better. And from anime, they show a little bit of the culture, and I started to get into drama, Japanese drama as well. And from there, it just kind of grew, and really, I just kind of decided the goal that I wanted to get more into this whole culture that I really like so much, that helps me go through the tough time. And so from there, I decided I want to learn some Japanese.
Okay. And so when you were originally watching it, it was subbed into English, is that correct?
Yes, it was subbed in English. When I first watched it, on TV, it was dubbed. But then I went to the internet, and I tried to find it. I was doing some downloading, but I'm doing that, and I found the subs, yeah.
Okay, so on TV, it was dubbed into English.
Yeah.
Which
so
always sounds weird no matter, which way they're going. I'm sure
Yes.
American movies sound strange when it gets dubbed into Japanese.
Yes.
But then you found the subtitles. Did you find that reading the subtitles helped your understanding of the Japanese?
At first, I would pick up a few words. Like, I'm sure if anyone watches anime fans would know this. You'll pick up a few words like the words kawaii and konnichiwa, like regular, just standalone hello, simple phrases. But from that point on, it doesn't help you really much at all, rather than just picking up standalone phrases by watching subs.
So you can pick up a few words, but that obviously is not going to help you become fluent. How do you transition that into fluency?
Right. Well, the first thing I did particularly is I went after America's favorite language learning program, Rosetta Stone. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Of course, right? So I went for that one. I started to learn that way. And I don't know if you've done it. There's like pictures and then there's words and you have to match the pictures to the words. And at first, I thought that was really cool, really interesting, kind of a fun way to learn. But after a while, they really didn't teach grammar really at all. And they kind of asked you to match these sentences to this big long sentence to this one picture, and it was hard to figure out what exactly they were talking about. So from my experience, it was actually got a little bit harder from, maybe 2 weeks. For the first 2 weeks, it was cool, but then after that, it was, in my opinion, I don't think it's the best way to study.
So then, did you try any other programs that would help you learn what they're saying in anime?
Yeah, well, here's where let me expand on that a little bit more on how I got to the whole thing of learning Japanese from anime. Went through Rosetta Stone. I also went through Pimsleur after that because I felt Rosetta Stone didn't work. Have you heard of Pimsleur?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Pimsleur audio program. Went through that one, and a lot of people say it works, and I found that it worked as well too. I think I personally preferred it to Rosetta Stone, but the thing I felt with that one was that they feed you kind of a little bit of constructed sentences where they don't teach you grammar again. It's just kind of like a repeat after me type sentence. They don't elaborate on what exactly you're learning. So I felt that was tough. And, the reason why I was doing these things is because in my area, we unfortunately didn't have a Japanese class at our high school or at a community college. So I really had to learn it on my own.
Yeah, I agree. I've used the Pimsleur program before to learn other languages. And while it feels like you're really learning a new language because you're repeating these sentences that they say. You're kind of like, wow, cool, I can say that. And then when they ask you in the program, do you remember how to say this? And you can repeat it. You kind of feel like, wow, yeah, I am learning something. But then your knowledge of that language is extremely limited. So if you do go to Japan or another country and you realize how limited your knowledge is,
Oh, yeah.
Within a very narrow spectrum, you can answer some questions, but anything outside of that, and you're totally lost.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I felt the exact same thing. And then after Pimsleur, I went through about halfway of Pimsleur, I believe. And then I went to this other program called Let's Learn Japanese Basic. It was a video program. Went through that one. I felt that was better than the other two. But here's where the whole thing came about is that I went through all this, did Rosetta, did Pimsleur a little bit, did this program, came back to anime, which is, kind of the whole motivation for me to learn the language and drama. Right. And, actually, I really, like you say, I couldn't understand a thing. Like, here and there, I'd pick up words, but it was weird to me because it was like, I studied so hard. Why didn't I improve almost at all? Like, zero. And, from that point on, I did some research, went online, and I actually found out a lot of people don't know this, especially beginners. More advanced Japanese people do this, but there's actually two types of Japanese. There's several, but basically they come into casual and formal Japanese. And things like Pimsleur and Rosetta Stone and, classes they teach formal. And, the stuff used in most anime and drama and, casual conversation in Japan is taught is casual. And learning formal, which is what I learned, and then going back to a casual thing, it's hard to kind of make the connection, and the words actually sound different. And I figured out that's the reason why. That's why I couldn't link up the knowledge that I had gotten.
So, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this evening, but I assure you there is plenty more on the Tokyo Podcast website, tokyopodcast.com. So please, I would highly encourage you to head on over there and subscribe to his feed and have his podcast, delivered to your computer fresh whenever it comes out. It's a new podcast, but based on what I've seen so far, there's a lot more really great content to come. And that's about it. So thank you all again for listening to or watching episode number 34 of Bridges. As always, please feel free to get in touch with us over at bridges@wanwan.fm. with any comments, questions, or suggestions for future content creators to be featured on the show. And once again, my name is Hiroki Matsuuchi, and this is Bridges, and thank you for watching. See you next week, guys. I promise this time. Bye.